Siamo alla vigilia del 25 aprile e occorre essere uniti contro le dittature e uniti nella verità. Non facciamo di questa l'aula della menzogna. Non il 26 febbraio, ma il 9 marzo, la scienza qua evocata, diceva che il virus era poco più che un'influenza. Quella scienza è quella a cui si è ispirato questo governo. È detto, è stato detto, è documentato, è stato detto, non mentite. Allora dite la verità, non fate di questa l'aula della menzogna. Almeno qui si applichi il principio di Giambattista Vico, verum ipsum factum. E allora avete sentito e avete dato i numeri, li voglio dare anch'io, no Dattis, no Pagani, non dite anche qui 25.000 morti, non è vero, non usate i morti per retorica e per terrorismo. I dati dell'Istituto Superiore della Sanità dicono che il 96,3% sono morti per altre patologie. Esattamente i dati, i numeri, dice questo. È la verità, è la verità.
Colleghi,
valli a leggere,
collega.
esattamente così, li ho letti tutti. Il 60% sono morti per altre patologie, detto dall'Istituto Superiore della Sanità. Se non lo sai, studia.
Collega Sgarbi, si rivolga. Collega Sgarbi, collega Trizzino. Collega Trizzino, collega Sgarbi si rivolga alla Presidenza.
Sono i contagiati e mentre l'Italia è la zona rossa, qui tutti erano senza mascherine. Oggi Basini è accusato perché la deve portare per forza. Siete ridicoli, non l'avete portata fino all'altro ieri. È esattamente così. In Germania economia, sanità e scuola il 4 maggio funzioneranno perfettamente. Siamo uno Stato con minori diritti nell'Europa. Germania ha dato prove di forza e di risposta giusta. Noi qui siamo umiliati ancora una volta dalla Germania, anche nella malattia. Abbiamo chiuso il 60% delle imprese. Io do dei dati, caro Trizzino, valli a verificare. Allora, è chiaro che io fui il primo a chiedere la chiusura del Parlamento. Oggi siamo qua, tutti mascherati. L'altra volta c'era soltanto dell'unto, c'erano pochissimi dall'osso. Erano pochi che portavano la mascherina, oggi si è additati se non la si porta. Ebbene, proprio perché la verità è la cosa più importante, diamo i numeri reali, non dobbiamo mentire. Ci sono certamente dei dati forti, li leggo anche qua, Trizzino, il 56% in Lombardia, il 14% in Emilia, l'8% in Piemonte, il 5% in Veneto. Non possiamo immaginare di applicare delle norme unitarie con zone così disparate di epidemia. E allora dico, almeno qui diciamo la verità. Misuriamoci con la Germania, siamo uniti nella liberazione contro l'ipocrisia e le menzogne, contro le falsificazioni, contro i falsi numeri che vengono dati per terrorizzare gli italiani. I 25.000 morti, lo diceva il professor Bassetti, sono morti di infarto, di cancro, di altre patologie. Non usiamoli per umiliare l'Italia, non usiamoli per dare ai cittadini false notizie. Date i numeri, controllateli e sfido in giurì d'onore te Trizzino a guardare i numeri.
Collega Sgarbi si rivolga alla Presidenza.
Ho semplicemente detto che i numeri li danno tutti, ma non diano numeri falsi. Non sono morte in Italia 25.000 persone di coronavirus. Non è vero, è un modo per terrorizzare gli italiani e imporre una dittatura del consenso. È ridicolo.
Man-made and natural epidemics. Perhaps influenza H1 was a virus created in a laboratory that got out of control, originally being meant as a military weapon.
In the latest case revealed today, CDC workers somehow lost track of samples of the dangerous H5N1 influenza virus. The virus wound up being added to a shipment in March from a secure CDC lab in Atlanta to one run by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Athens, Georgia. The CDC says both facilities are highly secure and nobody was ever at risk. This comes just after 60-year-old vials of smallpox virus were found in a cardboard box at this NIH building in Maryland. Test results revealed today showed some of the virus is alive. And last month, the agency reported lab workers may have been exposed to live anthrax after sloppy procedures were used at a CDC facility.
To be the site of a deadly cancer cluster, more than 100 people living in that area have developed cancer. And this morning, ABC2's Linda So is here with what two citizens are saying. Linda.
Well, those two groups of people who live around Fort Detrick say the Army is behind a big cover-up. They claim they have dozens of informants, people who have worked at Fort Detrick and some who are still employees there who are feeding them secret information. For decades, Fort Detrick was the site for the Army's biological weapons program. Scientists there experimented with plenty of chemicals and pathogens. People living in that area say those toxic chemicals are still leaking into the ground. Those two citizen groups say they conducted a year-long investigation that found a startling number of people with cancer living in that area. 22 people on Kemp Lane, 42 on Rocky Springs, and 60 on Shookstown Road. At least 80 neighbors have filed claims with the Army saying contamination contributed to their cancer.
I had Hodgkin's disease when I was 13 years old, and I just finished up with breast cancer at 39. And I grew up right in the hot spot.
Note 4, Governor Hogan is calling for an investigation over the handling of the adenovirus outbreak at the University of Maryland that led to the death of student Olivia Paragal. In a letter to the Board of Regents, Hogan referenced the timeline of events published in the Washington Post, saying university officials chose not to disclose confirmed and suspected cases of the virus and held on to the potentially life-saving information for weeks. Hogan also called for any findings of an investigation to be made public. Earlier this month, Olivia Paragal's family began taking the necessary steps to file a lawsuit against the school.
Now to an ABC 7 health alert. A number of people hospitalized in the past 24 hours with the same illness that's blamed for 2 deaths in a Northern Virginia retirement community. Now, that outbreak is also blamed for sickening dozens of other people. Our Northern Virginia Bureau Chief Tim Barber is tracking this at the Green Spring Retirement Community in Springfield. Tim?
Health officials here in Fairfax County sent the samples here to the CDC and ANOVA, but so far this virus is still a mystery. The symptoms usually start with the cough. But because older people's immune systems are not as strong, in less than 2 weeks, 55 residents have gotten sick at Green Spring Retirement Community.
It's extremely sad, my goodness, and very serious.
Fairfax County's director of epidemiology says the county's had similar outbreaks, but they're usually the flu in the winter.
Our most important concern right now is ensuring the safety of other residents who are there.
The outbreak has only been reported in the assisted living and skilled nursing facilities. But management here is telling residents visitation is suspended until further notice, and no Garden Ridge resident, healthy or sick, should leave their respective neighborhoods. Fairfax County's Dr. Benjamin Schwartz says the retirement community is taking the proper steps and thoroughly cleaning the facility while ANOVA and the Center for Disease Control work to figure out what kind of a virus this is and how it's spreading.
These panels have looked for several of the most common pathogens, and they have been negative so far.
That's wonderful that they're trying to find out what it is, because it could easily spread.
And as soon as we get the results to those samples back from either ANOVA or the CDC, we're going to let you know right away. Reporting in Fairfax.
A U.S. military laboratory in Maryland has become the center of a heated discussion. Created by the U.S. government during the Second World War, Fort Detrick was initially a secret research facility for germ warfare. Bacteria studied at Fort Detrick included anthrax, a deadly and highly infectious agent that has been used in terrorist attacks. During the war, the U.S. government ordered 1 million anthrax bombs from the base. Today, the base houses high-end research facilities, including the United States Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases, also known as USAMRIID, which leads the U.S. government's research on some of the most dangerous pathogens known to mankind, like Ebola. In July 2019, however, research at Fort Detrick came to a halt after health authorities shut down its laboratories due to safety concerns. A CDC spokeswoman later confirmed that all research on select agents and toxins in biosafety level 3 and 4 laboratories were suspended. Inside the labs, the CDC found at least 6 violations of federal guidelines, including critical containment procedures. Moreover, the inventory of select agents in the lab was inaccurate. There were also leaks caused by a dysfunctional wastewater decontamination system, though the CDC claimed that the leaks were limited within the labs. The most suspicious part of the CDC inspection report was its large redactions, leaving the agents involved in the 2 breaches unidentified. The CDC cited national security reasons for not releasing further details. Carol Krim of Maryland's House of Delegates is among those who have questioned the lack of transparency over the health and safety risks posed by the military base. Over the years, Fort Detrick has been involved in several controversies. The most famous incident is the 2001 anthrax attack. In September 2001, mails containing anthrax were sent to U.S. government and media offices. The incident caused 5 deaths. The 2 main suspects were both former researchers at Fort Detrick. These incidents certainly deserve to be examined more and should raise concerns over the safety of U.S. biological research.
The P4 lab at the Wuhan Institute of Virology has come under scrutiny as a potential source of the virus. According to an NBC report, a hazardous event may have happened at the lab in October last year. 3 people familiar with the matter told NBC that U.S. intelligence agencies are reviewing an unofficial report on cell phone location data. The report found there was no cell phone activity around the high security part of the P4 lab between October 7th and 24th last year. The report suggests there may have been a hazardous event there sometime between October 6th and 11th that required the lab to be closed during that time. The report talks about images from October 14th to 19th last year showing no outbound traffic from the lab. It's suspected a roadblock was set up to prevent cars and people coming and going. This is in contrast to satellite images from August to October 6th, which show a lot of activity. The next instance of activity was on October 25th. U.S. Senator Tom Cotton also spoke about the data in an interview with Fox News. Cotton said normally thousands of mobile phones are in use around this area. Wuhan has about the same population density as New York. He adds the sudden drop in cell phone usage is likely an indicator of when the virus first began spreading. He said we could get to the bottom of it a lot faster if the Chinese regime was more transparent.
It is time to get your flu shots. The State Department of Health announced today the first confirmed cases of seasonal flu in Maryland. 2 cases, an adult and a child, were confirmed by a laboratory test. Now, the flu is highly contagious and it can lead to serious complications, hospitalization, even death. The health department recommends anyone over the age of 6 months get the flu shot.
A new study by European scientists is raising questions about the origins of the deadly coronavirus. The study, which has yet to be peer-reviewed, was led by researchers from the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. The research suggests that the first outbreak of the virus may have gone undetected and happened as early as September 2019. That's 4 months before the first cases of a new mystery illness were reported to the World Health Organization at the end of December. Researchers also think the spread started south of the central Chinese city of Wuhan, which is where doctors first noticed the outbreak that has grown into a global pandemic. In an exclusive interview with the South China Morning Post, Peter Forster, a geneticist at Cambridge University, explained.
The virus may have mutated into its final human efficient form months ago, but stayed inside a bat or other animal, or even human, for several months without infecting other individuals.
Hello everyone, I'm Anita Cicero, Deputy Director of the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, and today I will be your Master of Ceremonies for Event 201. On behalf of our center and our partners, the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our audience here in New York, as well as our larger virtual audience participating online today. The goal of the Event 201 exercise is to illustrate the potential consequences of a pandemic.
Qui vient semer le trouble et c'est peu dire sur les origines de l'épidémie. En tout cas, la date à laquelle le virus serait apparu. Officiellement, la Chine a recensé le premier cas le 17 novembre. Pourtant, un mois plus tôt, se tenaient à Wuhan les Jeux mondiaux militaires qui rassemblaient plus de 10 000 athlètes. Parmi eux, la Française Élodie Clouvel, championne de pentathlon. Elle était sur place avec son compagnon Valentin Bulot, lui aussi champion. Elle en est aujourd'hui persuadée. Ils ont tous les deux contracté le virus.
Je pense qu'avec Valentin, on a déjà eu le coronavirus parce qu'on a été à Wuhan pour les Jeux mondiaux militaires fin octobre, début novembre. Et en fait, il s'avère qu'après ces Jeux mondiaux militaires, on est tous tombés malades avec les mêmes symptômes. Valentin, il a loupé 3 jours d'entraînement. Moi, j'ai été malade aussi. J'avais une grosse conjonctivite qui s'est transformée ensuite. Enfin, c'était trop bizarre. J'avais eu des trucs que j'ai pas eu avant et on s'est pas plus inquiété que ça parce qu'on n'en parlait pas encore. Mais c'est vrai qu'on rentrait de Wuhan et c'est à ce moment-là où le virus s'est développé et on a commencé à en parler. Et il y a beaucoup d'athlètes qui ont été très malades et on a eu contact avec le médecin militaire récemment qui nous a dit « je pense que vous l'avez eu » parce qu'il y a beaucoup de gens qui ont été malades de cette délégation.
Voilà, Élodie Clouvel, la championne de pentathlon, dont le témoignage vient donc bousculer pas mal de certitudes. Elle répondait en mars dernier, c'était passé assez inaperçu. Témoignage exhumé aujourd'hui à la chaîne de télé locale Télévision Loire 7.
RTL 6h03, on va à présent essayer de se projeter sur l'après.
Good evening. It's called the Centers for Disease Control, but there are serious concerns tonight about how well the CDC controls dangerous germs at its own labs after yet another safety lapse. Today, the CDC says it mishandled a shipment of deadly flu virus. This comes after a mishap involving anthrax and the discovery of smallpox virus that was misplaced at the National Institutes of Health. The head of the CDC today, Dr. Tom Frieden, said, quote, he was astonished at the latest breach and angry. Here's Dr. John LaPook.
For the third time in a month, the CDC acknowledged deadly pathogens were handled incorrectly in government labs. CDC Director Dr. Tom Frieden.
So I'm upset, I'm angry, I've lost sleep over it, and I'm working around the clock to make sure we do everything possible to resolve it.
In the latest case revealed today, CDC workers somehow lost track of samples of the dangerous H5N1 influenza virus. The virus wound up being added to a shipment in March from a secure CDC lab in Atlanta to one run by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Athens, Georgia. The CDC says both facilities are highly secure and nobody was ever at risk. Frieden said the mistake was discovered in late May, but he was only told about it this week.
Can you take me back to the exact moment when you first found out about H5N1?
I remember it vividly. I was sitting at my desk in our Washington office, and I was stunned and appalled that this could have happened and that there could have been this type of delay in notification.
This comes just after 60-year-old vials of smallpox virus were found in a cardboard box at this NIH building in Maryland. Test results revealed today showed some of the virus is alive. And last month, the agency reported lab workers may have been exposed to live anthrax after sloppy procedures were used at a CDC facility.
Certainly, it's a wake-up call. We need to improve systems, and we will improve systems at CDC.
The two CDC labs involved in the mistakes have closed temporarily, and Frieden declared an agency-wide moratorium on the transfer of any material between its high-security labs.
How can you assure the country that the CDC is doing its job here?
I can understand why people would have questions. I have questions. What happened so far at CDC should never have happened. It's not acceptable.
Forgive me for asking this, but is there anything else that you're not telling us?
No, we really have a commitment.
I think with some of this warmer weather, we wouldn't have so many illnesses going around in our community, but family medicine specialists at Health Source of Ohio say that is not the case. They're still giving out a lot of flu vaccinations at several area locations at no charge. They have had several offices in Mount Washington, New Richmond, Anderson, and Loveland already report sporadic cases. But here at Mount Washington, it's really other viruses, they say right now, going around causing respiratory symptoms, bad GI complaints like nausea and vomiting, as well as body aches, headaches, chills, and in severe cases, dehydration. Most have to be treated with comfort care.
We usually give them medication and treat their fever accordingly, and they usually go home, rest. That's the best thing for them.
So in the last couple of weeks, did that kind of go up, starting to see those kind of symptoms?
Seeing more symptoms, yes, a little bit earlier this year.
Amiyouche Amar is a fishmonger, originally from Algeria. He lives in the suburbs of Paris, he's married with children, and there's also now the possibility that he's one of the first people in Europe to have contracted COVID-19.
It shocked my wife, and then we saw the epidemic, the deadly tidal wave everywhere around the world. I'm blessed, honestly. The illness wasn't known back then. That's the worst thing. It wasn't known at the time. The doctors didn't know what to do. For them, it was a very severe infection. That's what was explained to me, but they weren't able to detect it.
But he may not be the only one to have caught the virus early, or even the first. A hospital in eastern France, using different tests, now says it's found a case of a man with the coronavirus from mid-November. The team of doctors which uncovered Amar's illness late last year says other hospitals have even better testing equipment that could result in more old samples coming back positive. Here is French doctor Yves Cohen.
Radio scanning is a very sensitive exam to detect COVID-19. It's better than our tests as their sensitivity is 98%, while ours is only around 70 to 75%. So it's good it's so sensitive, and if cases were really around in mid-November, it's extremely interesting and means the virus was spreading sooner than we thought.
This raises questions about the origins of the coronavirus. Dr. Cohen says his study tells us more about the spread.
We know it didn't start in early January, but earlier. What we can say is that the pandemic wave is slower than expected. The virus spreads slower. We know that we have almost 30,000 deaths in France and 1% of mortality rate for the virus. That means 3 to 4.5 million French people have been in contact with the virus.
French doctors suggest China, the US and other European nations retest old samples that could establish coronavirus cases existed across the world before the pandemic was officially recognized.
according to the CDC, this year could be a tough one. The flu's already widespread in 5 states, and last year at this point, it wasn't widespread anywhere.
How do you feel?
Not good.
You've been sick now for almost a full week. I mean, we actually went to the
It felt like a month.
but we went to the ER a week ago tomorrow.
He's been sick over a week, remember? He started
Cover. So we had to go to the ER twice, right?
Yeah.
How do you... Okay. Press, I'm sorry you feel bad. You started slowly coughing a week before that. You're just getting worse and worse and worse. Is your cough better than it was?
No.
It sounds better.
Doesn't feel better.
It doesn't?
No.
Alright. Sorry you feel this rotten. So today is, well, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, 2019. So I think today's the 27th. So hopefully you'll feel better soon. All right.
The mayor of an American city believes he might have contracted the coronavirus in November, a month before China reported its first case. U.S. media reports say the mayor of Belleville, New Jersey, Michael Melham, is basing his assessment on the severity of an illness he had in November and the results of a recent blood test, which shows he has COVID-19 antibodies. Melham said it was highly unlikely he was exposed to the virus more recently due to the nature of those antibodies.
I know I was sick just because we believe that it came to the States in January. That's the first time someone tested positive for it in January. That doesn't mean it wasn't around here before that. And we both kind of agreed that, listen, I was extremely, extremely sick to the point where I describe it as I was gravely ill in November. So there's only 2 options. I was gravely, gravely ill in November when I was certainly gravely ill. And I'd never been that ill in my adult life. And I had virtually every single one of the symptoms. The facts are this: either I had it in November before anybody admits that it was here, or I had it in January, February, or March, and I was asymptomatic, which is highly unlikely for me. I'm very in tune with my body. I know my body very well. I've actually felt great for the last 3 or 4 months. If my immune system was fighting something off, I know I would be tired. I know the symptoms I have. It's only A or B. Either I was sick in November when I believe I was, when all the evidence, anecdotal evidence, matches up to the fact that I was sick in November, or I was asymptomatic in January or February. I seriously doubt that. Another note that I'll tell you is that the test that I took has 2 different antibody results. It has something called the IgG and the IgM. The IgM is the more recent, which would have shown that antibody is more recent in my system. My body more recently fought the coronavirus. The IgG is the longer lasting one, and that's the one I tested positive for.
Season is in full swing here in the Bluegrass, so much so UK Hospital has temporarily changed its inpatient visitation policy. LX 18's Claire Kopsky joins us from the hospital with the very latest.
This morning we met with the doctor who told me depending on which UK healthcare unit your loved one is in, you may receive a mask and other protective clothing when you walk in to visit. If you have any flu-like symptoms, you will not be allowed inside. There are also several other restrictions. Right now, the hospital is not allowing any visitors under the age of 12. They are also only allowing 2 visitors in a patient's room at a time. Now, the hospital did say some exceptions will be made for compassionate visitations on a case-by-case basis. These measures are now in place at UK Hospital, Kentucky Children's Hospital, UK Good Samaritan Hospital, and Eastern State Hospital.
Our goals here are to weigh the risk-benefit to assure that the patients
and families' needs are met while they're here, but also to keep them safe from the flu. And so we recommend that if there are issues with the visitation restriction, that you speak to your nurse or your nurse manager on that unit, and we will work with you. We really want to be able to give you what you need while you're here while keeping you safe from the flu.
All of these restrictions are in place with the hope of protecting the health of the patients, the doctors, nurses, and other health professionals here inside the hospitals working around the clock. Now, I'm told that these restrictions could be in place for weeks, if not months, until the flu numbers significantly decrease. Back to you.
Bottom line, we don't have to worry about this one, right?
Well, obviously you need to take it seriously and do the kinds of things that the CDC and the Department of Homeland Security are doing. But this is not a major threat for the people in the United States, and this is not something that the citizens of the United States right now should be worried about.
In most parts of the world, due to lockdown, most of the transmission that's actually happening in many countries now is happening in the household, at family level. In some senses, transmission has been taken off the streets and pushed back into family units. Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them in a safe and dignified manner.
It's not just our county that's bringing more people on. There are going to be thousands of people hired who will be these contact investigators throughout the state. And this is occurring in many, many other states as well, perhaps all of the states in our country. We will be giving intensive training to these people, training not only for identifying and finding contacts, but also in terms of how to be sensitive about doing it. We also realize that as we find more contacts, some of the people we find are going to have trouble being isolated. For instance, if they live in a home where there's only one bathroom and there are 3 or 4 other people living there and those people don't have COVID infection, we're not going to be able to keep the person in that home. Every person who we're isolating, for instance, needs to have their own bathroom. And so we'll be moving people like this into other kinds of housing that we have available. They'll also
over the CDC's plan to go door to door in Metro Atlanta to see if people have antibodies for the virus. Some saying they are afraid to let those medical workers inside their homes, and only CBS 46 was there. Our Jamie Kennedy spoke to one of the people who were tested today. Jamie, you're in DeKalb County. That's where some of those crews were.
Sean, the CDC were hitting the pavement tonight here in Candler Park, where the neighbourhood was happy to welcome them in, but many online saying they wouldn't have a bar of it. Homeowners in Fulton and DeKalb counties greeted by CDC officials surveying the community.
We're working with the Georgia Department of Public Health and the DeKalb Department of Public Health to do a seroprevalence survey around the community in DeKalb County to determine the community transmission for coronavirus.
Officials randomly selecting houses and drawing blood for antibodies and conducting a questionnaire to better understand the deadly virus's spread. Jordan Bear was one of the first to be tested.
Normally wouldn't have opened the door, but I looked outside and saw some folks in some PPE gear. One of them had a clipboard with CDC visible on it.
If you had not read online what they were here for, do you think you would have opened the door?
Probably not.
Many online have criticised the survey, saying people are meant to be sheltering in place and limiting contact with others, not going door to door.
You know, if they'd said, hey, yeah, you guys are number 7 of 7, I'm going to be a lot more reluctant to have them anywhere near me. But because we were number 1 and they were in full gear, I felt okay with it.
Alpharetta Police Department posted about the testing, saying there is not a definitive answer as to what a positive or negative antibody test means. Jordan says the family's test experience was great and they were happy to do it.
It wasn't anything intrusive. It wasn't anything that we were uncomfortable sharing. Like the CDC showing up and getting information could lead to a cure.
The real problem is that when human societies lose their freedom, it's not usually because tyrants have taken it away. It's usually because people willingly surrender their freedom in return for protection against some external threat. And the threat is usually a real threat, but usually exaggerated. And that's what I fear we are seeing now. The pressure on politicians has come from the public. They want action. They don't pause to ask whether the action will work. They don't ask themselves whether the cost will be worth paying. They want action anyway. And anyone who has studied history will recognize here the classic symptoms of collective hysteria. Hysteria is infectious. We are working ourselves up into a lather in which we exaggerate the threat and stop asking ourselves whether the cure may be worse than the disease.